It is 6 p.m. on Tuesday, September 27th. We're going to begin tonight's Planning Commission meeting. We do have a quorum here with two members present, absent. Ms. Glenda Brown and Ms. Signora Jackson could not attend this evening, but we do have a quorum. As the chairman, I'll call on the first item of business, which is the minutes from the meeting of August 23rd. We all had an opportunity to review those. Are there any errors, omissions, corrections that need to be made? If not, the chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes as posted.
So motion.
We have a motion by Ms. Valerie Walhart, second by Mike Griswold. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Motion passed unanimous. First item on the agenda is a variance to allow 4 rows of parking with 175 feet of pavement on the Social Circle Parkway. Before we begin the public hearing process, I want to hit some highlights, some notes. The public hearing process is here for the public to attend and be able to speak either for or against those items that you hear tonight. The Planning Commission members that sit up here with me are volunteer members, and we do not make decisions, we make recommendations. The City Council will make decisions on these items at their meeting. Each item will be called in order posted on the agenda. The applicant will be called upon to speak. The applicant has a total of 10 minutes to speak. The applicant may reserve time for rebuttal if he or she sees necessary. Upon conclusion of the applicant's presentation, or the 10-minute time limit, I will call upon those who are registered to speak in favor of the application. Upon conclusion of those that would register to speak in favor, I'll call upon those who would like to speak in opposition. Those who would like to speak in favor and those who would like to speak in opposition will have a total of 10 minutes for each opposing or favor side. Not a total of 10 minutes per person, but a total of 10 minutes per view. Upon conclusion of the public hearing, the Planning Commission members may ask questions of the members of the public that spoke, or may ask questions of the applicant. That time does not count against that 10-minute time limit for the applicant or the members of the public. All questions and all answers should be directed to the Planning Commission. We will not entertain any cross discussions amongst applicants, presenters, or members of the public. At the conclusion of deliberation by the Planning Commission, we will make a recommendation. And again, our recommendations go to the City Council for the City Council to render a decision on these items. We do have quite a few items on the agenda. I'm going to try to get through these as expedient as possible. If there's any opposition to any items on the agenda, or those are there in favor for items on the agenda, if you hear that your opinion or your position is repeated multiple times, we hear them the first couple. You don't need to repeat them. We ask that you please show some respect for those on the agenda and for us, and not get bogged down in a repetitive discussion. With that said, our first item is a variance to allow 4 rows of parking with 175 feet of pavement on the Social Circle Parkway. Ms. Barber, would you introduce this item for us?
Yes, sir, Chairman. We have an application for a variance to allow additional parking on the parkway that is not allowed in the corridor ordinance. The issue is they want to increase their parking area of plus or less 24 feet in parking area, plus or less 30 feet on the drive aisles for the bypass access lane, not line. The applicant's building large distribution warehouse facilities, distribution centers in an area zoned light industrial, and is located within the highway corridor. Applicant is Walton Leaf, and he's developing a distribution warehouse known as Social Circle Logistics Center, located off the Social Circle Parkway, Highway 11, East Hightower Trail. The applicant has asked the city to grant a variance with the parking field being more than the 60 feet that is allowed in the highway corridor ordinance. The site space is restricted due to numerous stream locations. The applicant has received approval, the national approval from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers for the stream encroachments. The Corps' approval requires the applicant to purchase mitigation credits as outlined in the official letter. The Social Circle Highway Corridor states that a large area of asphalt parking without landscaping adjacent to the roadway is not permitted. The required alternate is side and rear parking, and landscaping amid the front parking spaces if any is allowed. The ordinance also encourages shared parking among the project's proposed buildings to minimize large areas of pavement. We had this variance request, and we did a little research last week about asking for a variance request, and this will benefit. There's another building besides the building 100, but the 288 parking spaces. They will also have 321 parking spaces on the Social Circle Parkway and 72 parking spaces in a future parking lot. From the site drawings, it looks like there's 190 feet of pavement located between the Social Circle Parkway. Also, there's 190 feet of pavement between the northern building elevation and the landscape strip of East High Tower that is included in the highway corridor overlay. The frontage of pavement areas should be limited and screened by evergreen frontage vegetation. The ordinance also states that developments along the pedestrian corridors are required to construct public sidewalks to be connected to any existing sidewalks. Staff recommendations for the Planning Commission would consider a recommendation of keeping with the maximum 60 feet of pavement allowed between the right-of-way and the building due to the variance request is over 50% of the allowed variance requested stating in our zoning ordinance. This is one request is like 115 feet over the 60 feet and one's like 130 feet over our maximum allowed amount. If the Planning Commission, Corridor Commission does recommend approval, it is with the understanding that a variance request will not only benefit building 100, but will also benefit building 300 with 321 parking spaces and 72 future parking spaces. They are proposing south of the building 300. Also, there appears to be 190 feet of pavement between the northern building elevation and the landscape strip on East High Tower Trail, which is included in the highway corridor overlay. And like I said before, landscape designs should retain the city's rural heritage through conservation and green space with adequate screening of loading, docking, and any storage areas. A variance is to provide minimum relief necessary for the use of the property. That's all I have. I've got a couple of pictures, and I have a one on the wall up there, but I want to show, originally, this was, back over here. This is the original parcel. There's parcel tract 1 and 2. The bottom area here shows where that 72 future parking, and these have been combined into one parcel. And this parcel and the lower parcel was already zoned I-1 since 2000. This parcel 1 consists of 183 acres. And that's parcel SC 23006. The smaller parcel at the lower end consists of 58.77 acres, which they have been combined. Now this is the one parcel, and it's got the 3 buildings. So you can see up at the top northern part where they have removed, I can't remember the number, but they have made a lot of parking at the rear of the building and left this up here with the 288 parking spaces. Now, if you come south of building 100, you've got 321 parking spaces there. And then down at the bottom, where the little road is, there's 72 future parking spaces there. And all of this will be on Social Circle Parkway. And the next one is a little colored one that will show a little bit better on the buildings.
And Barbara, like you said for the record, the parking around that building 100 shown up there has been revised to eliminate some of that parking between the building and the Social Circle Parkway, correct?
That's correct.
But we still have the parking north of the building in between East High Tower and the building, right?
That's correct.
Is there anything else, Barbara? Are there any questions that the Planning Commission have of staff? If not, Mr. Osborne, please.
Yes, thank you. First of all, as has been mentioned, this is not a current site plan. Building 100, the million square foot building This site plan is showing 8 rows of parking and 240 feet of pavement. We reduced that in half to change it to 120 feet of paving and 2 drive aisles. We took 120 feet of the parking that we had on that end of the building, moved it to the opposite end of the building, and that's not ideal for us. That's a compromise that we'll have to deal with in our leasing, as tenants want to have the front of the building to have most of their parking. Clearly, a 1 million square foot building with 60 parking spaces and 1 drive aisle is just not possible. Our property's owned industrial. There's no industrial building that could comply with that requirement. And we have tried our best to be as cooperative as possible in all the variances that we have requested. Additionally, the opposite end of Building 100, where we moved the auto parking, the 120 feet that we reduced on the other side, is not an overlay district. As you can see on this line right here, that's the end of the overlay district. So with respect to landscaping, we have cryptomeria trees and we have magnolia trees that line the entire property on Social Circle and East Hightower. These trees will grow to be 40 feet tall. I have some line of sight drawings, 2 of which I left with you last time. Barbara, I don't have those with me. I don't know if you have them. But they will give you a line of sight from your car looking at the building at that level. The only problem that our drawings have is there were no cryptomeria trees in the model program, so you'll see trees that have trunks, 3 to 4 feet high. That's not going to be the case. Cryptomeria trees and magnolias have limbs that go all the way to the ground, so you'll not see under the trees. You won't see anything under the trees, and when they're full grown, you won't see anything in between the trees. We're spending over $3 million on landscaping. We got 235 acres, almost 50% of it is pervious ground, meaning that no asphalt, no concrete, no building, simply existing hardwood trees. That is unheard of in an industrial project of this size. So, we have taken this approach because we want to have a model for other developers that go into rural areas to show them that you can do a significant distribution facility, logistics facility, and do it as softly as possible. And I assure you that you would be hard pressed to find any development like this where you have a tree line, an existing tree line of hardwoods in between every building. Barbara mentioned building 300. That has never been mentioned. We've been working on this since March of this year. It has never been brought up by the planning staff as a variance. There's been no variance request from the planning staff on that building. We've had numerous meetings. This is our second planning commission. Tomorrow will be our second mayor and council meeting. Have had numerous emails, meetings, and so forth since March with the staff. And again, the parking lot on building 300 has never been brought up as a problem or a requirement of a variance. So I am not prepared to address that, and I frankly feel it's a little bit unfair to be brought up at this meeting without me having any notice from anybody with the city that it would be brought up. But through this whole process and through a number of delays that we've experienced that have been frustrating, we've tried to remain respectful and gracious, keep our head down, keep working, and try to provide a quality project for the city of Social Circle that'll yield over $1 million in property taxes and 2,000 jobs. Thank you.
You have 4 minutes and 50 seconds remaining for rebuttal
Thank you.
on this request. All right, are there any questions of the applicant at this time, from planning commission, or if not, I'd like to hold those questions till after we hear from the public.
I have a question. So now it is 2 drive aisles. Is that changed? The picture that we just saw looked like 2 drive aisles.
It was 4, and
Yes.
and with this application, or the resubmission,
Resubmission.
they've reduced this from between building 100 and the parkway to 2 drive aisles. The majority of all that parking they had here, they shifted outside the overlay district. They shifted it to the
The
east.
rear, okay.
I'd also like to point out that every island is landscaped with trees and shrubbery in that parking lot. And the parking, on the opposite end of the building, and any trailer parking, which is listed as future parking, is not subject to, the COA overlay requirement of 60 feet of pavement. It is only applicable to auto parks. And it specifically says that in the orders.
Just for clarification, looking at the specific ordinance, properties greater than 3 acres are limited to 60 feet of pavement between the frontage landscape strip and the primary structure. Parking in the front yard shall not extend more than 2 spaces beyond either wall of the primary structure. Parking and loading areas for trucks and heavy equipment do not require interior landscaping if located entirely behind the primary structure and screened from public view, or screened from public road by an evergreen buffer at least 12 feet in height at maturity. So that is what that specific ordinance states. For those that are here to speak in favor of this request, there's no one signed up. Is there anyone who failed to sign up to speak in favor of this variance request? Okay, is there anyone that would like to speak in opposition of this variance request? All right, we'll close the public hearing. You do have 4 minutes and 50 seconds if you'd like to come up for rebuttal or have anything else to say.
Thank you very much, but I think I've.
We may have questions for you.
Certainly, I'd be
as
happy
we
to answer any
deliberate.
questions. Yes, sir.
I'd like to point out some powers and duties of the planning commission as it relates to hearings for variance requests. And this is in section 1501 of the social circle ordinances. It states, the planning commission shall have the following powers. 1, to recommend variances as will not be contrary to the public interest where owing to special conditions, a literal enforcement of the zoning ordinance will, in an individual case, result in unnecessary hardship, so that the spirit of the zoning ordinance shall be observed, public safety and welfare secured, and substantial justice done. Such variances may be granted only upon a finding by the mayor and council that A, there are extraordinary and exceptional conditions of the property in question because of its size, shape, or topography. B, the application of the ordinance to the property would create an unnecessary hardship. C, such conditions are peculiar to the property. D, such conditions are not the result of any action of the property owner. E, a variance if granted would not cause substantial detriment to the public good nor impair the purpose or intent of this ordinance. F, the zoning proposal is consistent with construction and design standards and criteria adopted by the city. G, the variance is not a request to permit a use of land, buildings, or structures which is not permitted by right or by conditional use in the district. H, the variance is the minimal variance that will make possible an economically viable use of the building, land, or structures. And I, the variance is not for use of land or building or structures that is prohibited by this ordinance or to change the density of a use allowed by the zoning ordinance or to grant a development right or standard in conflict with the conditions of zoning imposed by the mayor and council. Those, ladies and gentlemen, are the criteria which we have to follow and make recommendation on for variances. With that said, the variances apply to the property, not to a specific portion of the property. So the looking at building 100, that may grab your full attention. However, that same variance would apply to parking and the amount of asphalt between pavement, between building 300 and the Parkway, as well as building 100 and East Hightower Trail. So it would apply to all that area that the variance is being requested, because the specific ordinance is the overlay, and as the applicant pointed out, everything to the left of the red dotted line on the site plan is in the corridor overlay district. So what you see on the site plan provided there and provided in our staff, in our application package, those are the variances needed in order to allow the development in this capacity. In looking at this with those criteria, I have a hard time thinking that this is caused by the applicant, because it is a lot of building, a lot of asphalt on this piece of property. Can this piece of property have economic viable use industrially? I'm not an industrial developer, but I would think out of all the land that's there would be. But he is here as the applicant to look at it and to request these variances. I'm at a loss for this. I don't see how I don't see how we can mitigate this. I don't see how our ordinance, we can allow a variance to exceed the 50% as our ordinance states that Barbara pointed out. I'm at a loss for this, and I'm hoping some of my fellow members have some ideas or solutions.
Mr. Chairman, may I make one more comment with my 4 minutes?
Yes, sir. You have 4 minutes and 50
It
seconds.
won't take me that long. I just want to point out that the landscaping buffer, the evergreen trees that we're providing, is on all of the frontage of our property, including the frontage that is not in the overlay district. Okay, so although we're not required to do that by the overlay district, because that portion of our property is not in the overlay district, we are trying to be sensitive to the city's concerns, and therefore we're gonna keep that evergreen buffer with the same species of trees I mentioned earlier on all of our property frontage, whether it's in the overlay district or not. Secondly, as I said before, the idea that you could build 1 million square foot building and have 2 rows of parking is simply impossible. We've tried to be cooperative. We've cut it in half. That will hurt us in our leasing, but we will overcome it. But again, you've got a piece of property here that's zoned industrial. It consists of 3 tracts, 2 of which was owned by the city of Social Circle that we purchased, zoned industrial. We paid over $1 million for that property. And just think about that. I mean, and again, we're trying to be cooperative, so trying to build a quality project. But to have a piece of property that's zoned by the city and then have an ordinance that makes it virtually impossible to develop a Class A distribution facility is a tough thing to overcome.
So, in our last meeting, the discussion about the right-of-way and the city needing right-of-way on south of Hightower Trail, has that been resolved? Has there? Can you?
Yeah. As a matter of fact, we have hired our traffic engineer, A&R Consulting, which I've worked with for over 20 years, and I believe to be the best in the city of Atlanta. Has been working with Jimmy Parker with PPI, and then we have actually designed a road widening for the city for East Hightower Trail. And it consists of 5 lanes, all right? one, the middle being a
Center
median or center turn lane.
Yes.
And we'll be able to show that to you when we talk about our 25-foot encroachment on the landscape buffer. Now, I have to point out that for the city to make our plan come to life, you gotta come to us for land, because you're gonna be needing some of our land to do it. And we're certainly, we wouldn't have done this if we weren't willing to cooperate in that regard. But from Amber Studdard all the way up to the intersection, we're prepared to show you that you can build a 5-lane road, even though our traffic consultants tell us that, with all the projected future traffic and our traffic with our project, it would be very, very odd or unusual to warrant a 5-lane road at East Hightower.
So, I assume you're talking about the narrow strip of land north of East Hightower, south of the railroad tracks that was part of this track at one point?
No, sir, you will not need to use that to accomplish what we're going to show you tonight.
Okay, and you talked about, I'm sorry, we're gonna talk about that on the building material variance?
No, we were thinking that would be discussed on the 25-foot encroachment into the landscape buffer on the corner of Building 100.
Chairman, if I can interrupt, that was already heard by you guys last month with a recommendation over to Mayor and Council. Mayor and Council heard it at a public hearing, and they deferred it. So it will be no public hearing on that tomorrow night at Mayor and Council. They will make a vote.
So we won't have that discussion tonight?
No, sir.
Well,
Okay.
can you,
I wasn't aware of that.
can you go into that discussion about that roadway potential improvement, but you said it's from the intersection to Amber Staff. What about down to Knox Chapel towards the end of your property?
I can't control land I don't own. And I am, I'm
But
contributing
you
land.
do own,
What you do on that?
you do own that all the way down, because that's part of this plan.
Cody, can you show them? We have a board here that'll illustrate this better, I think. I don't know if y'all can see it that far away. Yeah, why don't you pass out those 8.5 by 11 drawings?
Yeah, Knox Chapel is directly across from Building 200.
Thank you.
That's right. And Cody, I think this road widening goes on the complete frontage of our property. Is that correct? So I'm sorry if I misled you with what I said earlier by mentioning Amber Studdard, but the road widening that A&R Engineering has designed encompasses the frontage of all of our property that we own.
So it doesn't look like the alignment would change much from the original.
So what we kind of looked at was, we looked along East Hightower where it parallels the railroad tracks, so there is that sliver of land
Yes, sir.
in between the railroad on the north side, but where it actually is up inside the railroad right of way, we held that as the edge of pavement,
Yes, sir.
and we assumed that we were widening all the way toward our side of the road. And you will need right of way, but what you can see here by looking at the sketch is, they are proposing to keep their building and parking well outside of the right of way. They have some pinch points with the future parking, but there's always some flexibility within, the design parameters of the roadway as well in the shoulders. We kind of took a very conservative approach looking at this. We kind of think that, that pinch point, that could be worked out. But see down here, all along Building 200, kind of where we really have that problem with Knox Chapel, we have plenty of extra room between the building and the existing roadway.
Yes, sir, and I appreciate both you gentlemen showing this and talking about that. To know that was a big point of concern, not only I had, but others had as well.
Yes, sir.
Up there
That variance is
closer,
gonna be heard again at our next.
But it's deferred, so we won't hear it. They didn't remand it back to us. The mayor and council will consider it tomorrow night.
and so kind of proceeding up and along East Hightower, there is going to be some lining left here on the other side. Not quite sure how far into the north that goes. So there might be a little bit up there, but between that, that actually kind of plays up to the benefit there, because East Hightower on this side Basically on the left side of Social Circle is actually kind of skewed, and it comes into that four-way stop at an
Yeah,
angle.
it does. Now, I'm noticing that already, the railroad right-of-way, as you move eastbound past Building 100, railroad right-of-way, it really is the property line for this property, and East Hightower is within it already.
That is correct. So all the widening we did in that case, the way it normally plays out, because we worked with that before and kind of experienced that is, as long as you're not widening toward the railroad, there's not a problem. So that's why all along where, as soon as it crosses in right after Amber, Stack Stutter,
Yes, sir.
all that, we held that existing edge of pavement on the close side of the railroad.
Where it's
the whole way.
at, and move the widening
Mhm.
further on your client's property.
That's correct.
And I know there was some discussion, I don't see the city manager here, looks like he stepped out. I know there was discussion about GDOT, Hightower's not a GDOT roadway, it's a city street.
That is correct. I can confirm that. We confirmed that with DOT in the very beginning when it was.
And they gladly said, no. we
Yeah,
don't."
they said it used to be, but we gave it back to them.
Yeah, at this stage, it's probably so early in the concept that no discussion with railroad has occurred either
Not to
from.
my knowledge.
Yeah, I wouldn't imagine there would be at this stage.
I would default to the city on that one. We have not, I think they're the ones spearheading this.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you again.
In this design, are we requesting anything from the railroad?
We would still need to get permission from them, the city still would, just because technically they're doing work inside their right of way, but
Well,
it wouldn't be a problem.
It looks like you guys may need it for your entrance in between building 100 and 200 for access on the right of way for construction of that entrance.
I think that's covered under existing agreements.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, I believe so. Because the way the railroad kind of handles that is they're not gonna maintain that roadway.
No.
It's all up to the city to maintain that roadway, so.
And the shoulders and everything else, dead lines.
Yeah, and so they leave that up to the city to kind of do that.
But they'll be the first to call the city if they get something on that right of way that they want removed.
Yeah, so we're doing everything, all of our widening on that side is toward the site
Yeah.
for that very reason,
So
so.
it's on, on the opposite side of the road as the railroad.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank
I
you.
know that satisfies the concern I had, at least those discussions have been had. So back to the topic at hand, ladies and gentlemen, the variance for to allow 4 rows of parking with 175 foot of pavement. That's the question, and again, I think that would apply to both the frontage on East Hightower and the entire frontage of the parkway for all the property within the overlay district.
I'm confused, it's 120 feet of parking pavement. It's not 100, the 175 feet is from the building to the
Yeah.
setback line. So I don't think that's accurate, I may be wrong, but I do know that the parking width is 120 feet, which is half of what it was we originally.
So it's 124 feet wide of asphalt between building 100 and the parkway.
120 feet.
And then 130 feet of asphalt between building 300 and the parkway. And then, looks like, more than that, 190, and then 190 between building 100 and East Hightower. Is that,
The parking lot at building 100 is, for auto, is 2 aisles and 120 feet.
I was looking at the truck court in between the building facade and the parkway.
There is no truck court between the parkway and the building.
Building 300?
There it is.
Again, this has never been mentioned by staff. I've been working on this since March. This is the first I've heard of it.
Okay.
So, that's very disappointing, and we've gone through a number of delays as a result of some misunderstandings by staff, and we've always been gracious and respectful and kept our head down and kept working. But this is, to bring this up at this time, since we've been working on this together since March, I'm sure you can understand it is a bit frustrating.
Yes, sir. I would think it is frustrating for you, but I also want to point out that if you didn't ask that question before, or if your surveyors, your engineers, your site designers didn't ask that question before, the ordinance is pretty clear within the corridor overlay that talks about properties greater than 3 acres are limited to 60 feet of pavement between the frontage landscape strip and the primary structure.
It's beside the structure.
What?
Not from the structure, it's beside the structure.
It's beside.
Is it between the building and the road? Is it between the building and the road?
Yes.
Then that's part of it.
It's truck park.
That's part of it. That's asphalt between it. It doesn't specifically say truck parking is excluded from this.
Okay.
I think she said it was over 50%. Go to the statute. Yes, it's over 50%.
It's over 50% of the ordinance. That's what's in the legal act.
So if there's no other discussion, the chair will entertain a motion for this variance request.
I'll make a motion to decline based on that the density issue, A, is a hardship created by the developer. B, is not in keeping with the standards of our ordinance. And I'll stop it at that.
We have a motion to deny for 2 specific reasons. There's a second. All those in favor, signify by raising your hand. Thank you. So the next variance request is for 1365 East High Tower Trail on building materials. Barbara, would you introduce this for us?
Yes, sir. This is a variance request to permit the use of building material different than what is specified in the ordinance, such as brick or wood siding, due
To the expansive size of the building. I didn't have my background. But like I said, this is a variance request on building material different from those specified in our ordinance. And the applicant, Walton Leaf, is developing a distribution warehouse and a social circle logistics center located on Social Circle Bypass or Parkway, Highway 11 and East High Tower Trail. The applicant has asked the city to grant a variance request to allow them to use an interior steel frame with perimeter structural walls of tilt-up concrete panels rather than wood or brick when constructing the distribution buildings. The applicant assessed that distribution buildings of this size could not structurally support a brick facade and an interior clear height of 40 feet yielding exterior heights of about 50 feet. The ordinance that outlines corridor standards in section 70B under architectural general criteria for conceptual planning states that brick and wood sidings are the most common traditional building material in the city. The ordinance proposes brick as a preferred material for building exteriors and adds that materials having a wood siding appearance such as hardy board or hardy plank are compatible substitutions, provided that the proposed reveal is similar to that of existing historic examples. Aluminum and vinyl sidings are not permitted. The applicant states that he would use accent tilt-up panels with paint schemes to enhance the building's appearance. Staff would recommend that the Planning Corridor Commission consider approval of a building material variance request if the applicant's variance request to increase parking was approved. The applicants asked for the 4 rows parking and 3 drive aisles. This would create 314 parking spaces at the rear of the building and 228 parking spaces at the roadway. The commission should note that the approval of the variance for parking could set a precedent for similar future projects. And that's all I had, is just that, on this note, this is the building material, and also, like I said, I put it at the bottom about if the applicant had approved the 4 rows of parking and 3 drive aisles on the application ahead of this, and did note that a variance request will include the property, not just that area, but it would grant them all the roadway parking.
Everything within the
Everything. They
overlay.
wouldn't have to apply for it again, it's gonna include it.
And for clarification, Barbara, for what this is asking for in our ordinance for industrial zone properties, this is property greater than 3 acres, shall frontage setback of at least 120 feet. Buildings in this area may propose alternative building forms, provided that all landscape requirements are fully met. Alternative materials for elevations not visible from the public areas may be presented. Only one public entrance is required, specifically on elevations facing the primary road. And transparency of 60% of the horizontal length of the facade and recessed windows is imperative. Is that the specific code section that you were
Yes, sir.
referencing?
706B, yes, sir,
Okay,
of the corridor standards.
okay. Mr. Osborne?
This is a revised rendering of our building. You know, we did provide elevations as well. I think y'all have those.
Yes, sir.
And, I have them too, but, in an industrial building, you know, you got one end, you know, both ends are virtually the same to both sides. You know, and so one thing that we did to try to recognize this, you know, this aspect of the ordinance is instead of having truck dock doors here, like we had previously, we installed glass
Like office.
on the corners, yes, sir. You know, and we also have clear story glass all the way down the truck, you know, the truck.
Yes, sir.
To get 60% of our elevation of glass on a distribution building with the truck courts on both of the long ends is impossible. To support brick on an industrial building is impossible. A tilt-up panel is about 8 inches thick. The process is that we pour the slab, then we form the panels on the slab, and before we place the concrete, we put in accessories that will create reveals and fenestration in the panels themselves, so that you'll see, you know, these lines right here, you know, those are reveals and fenestration that will be shown and be apparent on the elevations of the building. But, you know, these tilt panels are formed, they're cured, they're picked up by a crane, they're braced with a steel brace to stay up, and then we come in the middle, we install the steel columns and the bar joist, which eventually tie into the panels and provide structural support. There is no horizontal floor in this clear height building that would support brick. I mean, you just can't do it. And, you know, I've never seen a distribution building that's made out of brick and hardy plank. So, with that, you know, if you have any questions on the elevations, I'd be happy to answer those. And, I just want to point out that we have made an effort to, add more glass to this building at the expense of, losing, you know,
So-
dock doors.
On some of on the dock doors, I know Atlanta metro area, especially I-20 corridor, has been a hotbed of activity for trucking and distribution, warehouse, a lot of this type of structure going up, along the I-20 corridor. I'm very familiar with them and the type of construction. Some of them of which are using, usually doing a 2-light or sometimes a 3-light window, midway up the dock door, the roll-up doors. Has that been a consideration to help provide more?
Well, the
clear
clear story glass it's 9 feet long and 3 feet tall.
But that's at the top.
That's right.
I was thinking in the individual roll-up doors
No,
themselves.
sir, we couldn't lease a building like that.
Okay,
And by the way, there are 7 submarkets in the industrial market around Atlanta.
okay.
Social Circle is last in terms of distribution development.
Okay.
Okay, and interestingly enough, it's first in citizens that leave the city to go to work.
Okay.
But that's a different issue. I'm just trying to point out that we're doing all we can to make this building as attractive as we can and still be able to lease it and make it functional.
So, our ordinance, yes, sir, you've read it, you read the architectural requirements of it. Have you looked at a veneer? Not actually build it out of brick, but a brick veneer, or put some type of, other alternative material on it to help try to soften it and get closer to our standard?
No, sir, I'm not sure how that would be done.
Because it has been done. Stellar Construction has done some that I'm aware of.
Yeah, I'd like to see that. I'm not quite sure what you're talking about, but
And basically, it's a, for lack of a better term, they call it lick and stick. And they sell it in panels and it looks like brick and it's a thin brick and it's a brick veneer that.
yeah, I mean,
works on the side
I
of the
think I
building.
told you in our last meeting that we could put a stone or brick, like kind of wainscoting on the corner, but we can't put it on the truck before.
You wouldn't, consider doing it between some of the larger spanses between the truck doors where you have your columns, where you look like a brick column.
I mean, at some point, the building becomes unaffordable and you can't lease it. You know, there's a market rental rate,
Okay.
and for us to build a building we can't lease, it'd probably not be advantageous to any of us.
Okay. Well, at this time, we'll open up to the public hearing. If there's anyone who'd like to speak in favor of this request, please come forward. Anybody who'd like to speak in opposition, please come forward. All right, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. You do have 5 minutes remaining if you'd like to.
Yeah, I have one, I'm confused by what Barbara said about the drive aisles at the end of building 100. There are 2 drive aisles and 120 feet of parking. There are not 3 drive aisles, there are not 175 feet of parking. There's 120 feet of parking with 2 drive aisles between Social Circle Parkway and 100. I thought I heard Ms. Barber say something different. If I'm wrong, I apologize. I just want to clarify that because I thought I heard her say 3 drive aisles, and that's just not accurate.
That's what's on the application. I was reading from the application.
It's a loop road. Got the loop road.
It's a loop road.
Pardon?
Yeah, there's a loop road between the parking and the.
And so that was heard previously, and we made a recommendation to deny that request. So
Yeah.
we're talking about the request for the building material. But looking at your site plan.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying, when she opened up the discussion about building materials, I thought she said one was tied to the other. That staff recommendation would be
Yes,
conditioned on the parking being approved. Is
That's
that
correct.
not what she
that
said?
was her staff.
Okay, that's what I was responding.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I just said.
Well, I'm not sure there's any further discussion needed. Chair will entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to deny.
Got a motion to deny, second. And a second, all those in favor, please signify by raising your hands. Thank you. So the third item is a rezoning request from AG to GC, parcel SC 090098A00. Barbara, would you like to introduce this item for us, please?
Okay.
So we're done, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Y'all have a good evening. You too. Appreciate your time.
Okay. Sorry, I have lots of paperwork. Okay, this request is for is a rezone, and I'm gonna get my pictures changed over real quick, and then I'm gonna change my pictures. This is for 906 East High Tower Trail. The parcel ID number is SC
090098A00. The property consists of 3.5 acres, and they are asking for a rezone from AG R15 zoning to general commercial zoning. The property lies within a public right-of-way on all three sides of the property. The applicant, Ed Merchant, property owner Ted H. Holmes, want to build a gas station, convenience store, and a retail center with space for 2 restaurants on the 3.5 acres at the intersection of 906 South Cherokee and Social Circle Parkway. I do want to point out that this property had a house on it, and it was 906 South Cherokee. There was a driveway cut on South Cherokee, and when the house, the fire department actually took that down in training, the fire department. So this applicant is asking to rezone this property, and it would probably end up with a cut off the GDOT Road Parkway if this was approved, and have an entrance on the parkway. That would have to be approved through GDOT. That is not our road. Although there is industry and commercial development along the portions of the Social Circle Parkway, this 3.5 acres at the intersection of 906 South Cherokee and Social Circle Parkway is surrounded by significant residential homes. The city's future land use map shows that this property is part of the neighborhood character area on that portion of the Social Circle Parkway that is residential, and therefore would not fit with the general commercial zoning classification. Staff would recommend that the Planning Commission, Corridor Commission consider recommending denial of the rezone request due to the residential character of the surrounding of the neighborhood. However, if the Planning Commission, Corridor Commission would like to consider recommending approval with conditions, there are several suggestions, thanks to research. And I would read all of those. There's a stormwater detention facility should be underground so as not to be visible from our public right-of-way or our adjacent properties. That is the gateway to our town. A 5-foot wide sidewalk would be installed along the entire road frontage on both South Cherokee, Social Circle Parkway, and the improved paved portion of Laurel Street. We would need full compliance with ADA regulations. There shall be a 50-foot wide planted buffer along the unimproved portion of Laurel Street on the northern property line. Said buffer shall contain a minimum, a double row of evergreen hedge 6 feet high at the time of planting, and an open story shade trees planted every 50 linear feet and should be 3 inches in caliber at the time of planting. Legal cypresses are not, or should not be prohibited due to the susceptible nature of contacting diseases. The landscape plan would be presented to the tree board and approved before any land disturbance was issued. An irrigation system would be required to ensure adequate watering of the landscape material and grass. The grass areas should be done with sod. Along South Cherokee, Social Circle Parkway, and the improved portion of Laurel Street, a 10-foot wide landscape strip containing the following streetscape shall be designed and constructed. All the sidewalk landscaping strips shall have the street lights and street trees. The street lights should be installed at 50-foot intervals and sidewalk landscaping strip as long as the trees are in the right-of-way, or trees are not in the right-of-way, excuse me, and have a specific lighting to be pleasing in that area. The street lights should be 16 foot in height and finished in black. Drive-through services, loading docks shall be prohibited. Outdoor storage shall be prohibited. The hanging of mounting of banners or other signs on fences or gas pumps, canopies shall be prohibited. All mechanical equipment shall be screened from the public view. If the equipment is on top of the building, there shall be screened by a parapet wall. Underground utilities shall be required. Any retaining wall shall be faced with brick or stone and shall be complementary to the building. Exposed neon LED lighting strips, similar lighting sources used to outline or detail architectural elements such as doors, windows, roof lines, etc. shall be prohibited. Exterior lighting fixtures shall have curved arms to focus light downward, and exterior lighting poles shall contain no more than 2 fixtures. All exterior lighting should be yielded and directed downward. All exterior lighting shall be designed, installed, located, and maintained such that the light trespass onto abutting properties and public right-of-way is prevented, and any light generated on that property is kept within the boundaries of that property. All light fixtures shall be full cut-off lumina types whose source is completely concealed with opaque housing. Lights shall not be visible from any abutting property or public right-of-way. The maximum luminous for outdoor lighting shall not exceed 30,000 luminous per acre. Lighting underneath canopies or gas pumps, gas stations shall be restricted to no more than 40 lumina per square foot canopy. All fixtures shall be recessed into the ceiling of the canopy and shall not hang below the ceiling of the canopy. Decorative wall packs may only be used at service entrances to the building and shall be used to draw attention to the building or provide general building or site lighting. Wall packs shall be shielded and aimed so that the center of the light beam is no more than 62 degrees above a bar. A light plan shall be required prior to the land disturbance permit and shall include the following: a plan indicating the location of all proposed luminous, a description of all luminaries, illustration from the manufacturer. There's currently a driveway cut, and I have already said that, on South Cherokee, but not one on Social Circle Parkway. The developer would need to obtain a GDOT permit for their property on the parkway if they're creating a driveway. Staff strongly suggests that all conditions for this site and the building design are met since this is a gateway parcel.
Thank you, Barbara. Just to point out, staff's initial recommendation is to deny, since it is in conflict with our future land use map. But should the planning commission and should mayor and council consider approval, those are conditions that you would recommend. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. At this time, we'll hear from the applicant.
Good evening, commission members. My name is David Osmer. I'm an attorney in Covington. I'm here on behalf of the applicants. There's two main points that I'd like you to consider, because obviously this would require changing future land use map, changing the zoning. Zoning and future land use maps are obviously vital to planning. They're incredibly powerful tools that are needed. But even in the comprehensive plan itself, there's built-in exceptions for situations that I would argue would apply here. For instance, in the neighborhood character classification or district, there's even a mention of limited commercial development, even in that description of the comprehensive plan. And when you take the general and apply it to the specific, in this case, I think you'll see that this parcel itself is pretty unique along the corridor. It's unique in this small area and would warrant a rezoning. You've probably seen it, but it was so stark that I wondered if I could approach and hand you each just two satellite images to take a look at. Yeah, they're the same, just before and after the parkway was put in. One of the applicants, the property owner, Mr. Holmes, he owns a large parcel there, which was one large parcel. And when the parkway, where the route that it was decided to take, that came in where it does now, it essentially cut off the corner of his large piece that you can see had a barn, it had, it looked to be a garden on it, things like that. Because of the parkway, he no longer really has access to this piece. It's surrounded on three sides by two major roads and then a subsidiary road. And he can't really, it's no longer suitable for its prior use, the way he had used it before. You'll see on there that just given the location, it's not really feasible for it to be agriculturally zoned any longer. This is unique. If you look further down the area of the bypass even that's, you know, ag and residential, this is the only piece of this size at this intersection. Now, this intersection that again, the applicant didn't desire to create, but was kind of, you know, he is dealing with what has been dropped in his lap essentially. And every car that is either going to go through Social Circle or around Social Circle is going to go right by this piece of property. As the industrial fills out, as we've seen tonight, along the bypass, and even the mirror image of this intersection on the north side of the city, it was kind of known that there would need to be commercial development there as well. But as it develops, the traffic will even just get more and more on the bypass there. The volumes will go up. There will be semi-trucks regularly, which is the point of a bypass, so that those don't go through downtown Social Circle. But as a secondary consequence of that, this piece of property then bears the brunt of that. So whether you have people turning left, going to the downtown area, or whether they're continuing to one of these, you know, larger industrial developments, or simply bypassing Social Circle on the way to another destination, this piece of property bears the brunt of all that. I know when we were looking for a home, one of the things you have to think about, you know, is privacy. And there's a reason that any time you have these major intersections like this, you very rarely will find a single-family residential home right there on the intersection. When you do, it usually pre-existed the intersection, and simply is a holdover from prior to that intersection existing or being expanded. In this case, Mr. Holmes will have to convince someone essentially to build their home in full view on all sides of public roads on this major intersection, and that has proven to be a challenging thing for him. So, looking at this parcel, it's just not suitable for as it's zoned now. At some point, it's going to have to be rezoned, just because ag zoning is just wholly, the conditions on the ground changed with this parcel, and that zoning is no longer appropriate for the reality on the ground as it exists with this parcel. The other piece that I'm sure everyone is concerned about is what would be built there. If you look at the renderings, not just this one, but there were multiple done. I think you've received a site plan. And unfortunately, our engineer, Nick Roper, couldn't be here tonight, but my understanding is he's been in conversations with staff and has answered any questions that they would have. But the building itself, you'll see, to me, is almost unrecognizable as a service station, convenience store. Its placement on the parcel itself was done to maximize the shielding to the surrounding neighborhoods and areas, to minimize visibility. So it was actually done in a way that was not the most commercially profitable way to place the building. And you'll see that the materials proposed, they comply with all the overlay requirements. There's substantial screening that will take place, but the portions of the building that you will be able to see will essentially blend in there because of the materials that are required, the design elements that are there. And so it will not stick out like a sore thumb the way I think some people would be concerned that it would. It doesn't look and isn't designed to be like the kind of service stations that I grew up seeing, or if you ride around town now and look at the gas stations you see in Social Circle now, the way they look more like traditional gas stations. I know that the gas station right in town, that you know, I turn by every day to drop my kids off at school. It looks nothing like this. It's a traditional kind of white metal building with no screening, no nothing. I know it predated a lot of the zoning ordinances, but the ordinances are not to simply prohibit building, they're to guide building. And in a situation where you've got this parcel that's no longer really appropriate for residential, a design like this with all the different concessions and added expenses that they're willing to undertake, that is what these ordinances are designed to do. And so I would submit that, you know, I hope you've all watched the video that was done of this, that you've had a chance to go through the renderings, to go through the site plan that's been submitted. And you'll see that what comes to mind when you think of a convenience store, when you think of a gas station, this is not really what comes to mind. This is completely different. Knowing that this is a gateway parcel should raise a couple of concerns to you. One being aesthetics. My client has also agreed, I think in consultation with staff, to put a rather expensive, large, very nice welcome sign to replace the one that's kind of across the street, the small white one that's there now that says "Welcome to Social Circle." This would be really the design to be chosen by the city and put there, and it would actually enhance this turn in this intersection a lot. The other thing.
Osborne, your time is up.
Okay, I appreciate your time.
I do have a quick question again.
Sure.
Your client's Mr. Holmes, is that correct?
Mr. Holmes and Mr. Merchant.
Okay. Mr. Merchant is the developer who wants to develop the property, and Mr. Holmes is the property owner?
Yes, he's the property owner.
And I'm just gonna go on the assumption that Mr. Holmes was compensated for the property that he lost with the Parkway.
I don't have any actual knowledge of that, but he probably was, I would assume so.
Being a GDOT route, I'm sure. So the idea of can't do nothing with it, well, you did it yourself, you got paid for it, you know, so.
Yeah. And he likely didn't have any choice, but
Yeah, I mean,
was given something by
yeah,
GDOT, I'm sure.
maybe so. Okay. At this time, I don't have any other questions. Do any of the planning commission members have questions of Mr. Osborne?
Not currently.
We may have some after the public hearing. So, thank you.
Yeah, and just to clarify,
Yes,
Mike Falah is going to speak as well. While not, you know, I believe the owner, he is going to be the day-to-day face of the business if it's constructed. Just to clarify my role with him. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll open up the public hearing. Mike Falah, you are the first one signed up to speak.
Yep.
So if you'd like to come up, again, there's a total of 10 minutes. There's other people who are signed up to speak as well. You'll just be.
Good evening, everybody. I just want to pass, can I approach? This is from Washington DC White House. I was,
That may or may not be in your benefit, it depends.
this is, I do a lot of social work while I run the gas station. That's where Mr. Mike is. And we have the raffle. Can you see the microphone? And put it on the raffle.
Okay,
Mike.
if you can pass, if you'll go back to the
Microphone, please.
microphone,
Yeah.
and we'll pass these around so we can look at it. Thank you.
Mike, state your name, please, Mike.
Mike Hassan Fala. I've been in Social Circle from July 1992. It's been 30 years. I've been running a gas station from a hub, BP Highway 11, and it's day to day, every day. And while I was working and running the station, and I came through a lot of things that I have to help them. One was at the anniversary of September 11th, 2001. The Marines were passing by on I-20. They were in 3 buses, and one of the buses got broke, and it was 98-degree hot. They were all in full air. They pulled in the gas station, and one of the sergeant, the one with my picture on the top, he approached me. He said, young man, my young man and woman, they are all stuck here. We're going to North Carolina to fly for Iraq. We're going for war. And we have to wait here, doesn't know, 8 to 10 hours till the bus comes in. So I shut down the gas station, brought them in, opened the cooler door, because they were so hot, they were all sweaty, men and women. So they were there for 7 hours, and we opened the cooler door, and whatever they want, because they didn't have cash in them, they're going on the war, so they don't have, so we didn't charge anything. So they were for 7 hours, and every man and woman, they asked me what's my name, where I came from, all the details. And they all left, we hugged, and we all took pictures. And the next day, the morning, as I was in the office, I got a call, and the lady came in, the cashier, and said, hey, somebody's looking for you for Washington. I said, my God, what did I do? Washington, I never been there. And I approached the phone, I picked it up. He said, I'm Timothy Hoffman, the commanding chief from Marine, and I'm calling you from Washington, D.C. And I want to talk to you, young man. Are you Hassan Fala? Mike Hassan Fala? I said, yeah. He said, I just want to thank you for what you did for our men and women, because they said they were stuck with the same bus at the Quick Trip before they passed, after they passed Alabama. And they didn't even offer them a cup of coffee. And you shut down your business, and you opened for men and women, and they have requested me, before they fly, some of them will make it back, but they wanted to thank me. So he took my address and this, and all that, and the next day, in 24 hours, it was a UPS. He sent me a flag, and all that, and plug and this, and that was the first one. And then again, Matt Cooper got shot. So I was the first one. We went to the hospital to see him. Everyone was there. And then we started doing the raffle thing. So I got my bike, which I bought it from my sister-in-law. She went to war. So that bike I bought it from her because she couldn't make the payments. And I put it for Mr. Cooper for a raffle. And we collect $22,000, and we gave the check to his wife. And same thing, we do a lot of first run, a lot of different community services I do. So this is what I operate. I'm not coming in the social circle today. I've been here 30 years. There are some churches in social circle right here, Marsh Hills and this. I've been doing with them a lot of things for the kids, the church shows, the Bible readings. So I'm in the community for community. I'm not here to make money. I'm not an outsider. I spent my 30 years on Highway 11. So this is, I request to the city to consider this. I'm not somebody who's come just yesterday and want to make money like a lot of corporations coming in. I'm here, and I only leave from here 1.5 miles from here. I have a small farm called Fala Farm on Pine, and I'm there all the time. So the community knows me. So I just request to consider this as a local guy. And thank you very much for your time.
Would this be a second location for you, or do you have other locations?
Yeah, I have Madison locations. Yes, I have Madison with Morgan County.
Okay.
Yeah, and we do a lot of over there, a lot of good things with the Madison City.
Okay.
So this is close to my house, and me and my wife, we're getting retired, so we're going to handle this personally as a family business.
Okay.
So that's what we are considering this, because I'm 58, so I won't be able to run around. So this is going to be my home for 1.5 miles, it's my house. And I want to do, till the day I die, a community service. Because all my 3 sons growing up, my son is a surgeon, and he has done his surgery from Newton County, and we did his homework while we run the gas station, me and my wife. So we are a small, just a family.
Sure.
So.
Another question for you. So you would just be the operator of the
Operator
service
and part
station?
owner, yes.
I misspoke earlier.
Oh.
He is a co-owner.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the plans also show several tenant spaces as well. Those would be just kind of like what's down at at Highway 11, we have some
Yeah.
tenant spaces to lease as well?
Yeah, but it's gonna be completely different than that.
Yes, sir.
It's gonna be
look
nicer, more, family oriented.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions, Mr. Fallon, at this time? Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
The next listed to speak in favor is Michael Smith. Mr. Smith, there's 4 minutes remaining, so.
It's gonna be short.
Okay.
Yeah, my name is Michael Smith. Mr. Fowler, I've been knowing him for 30 years. And I remember the Martin and back to church. And every time we have any kind of program, and if they go on that church, you were always there for us. I think you all approve this for the community. I think everybody would do good on it. That's all I had to say, but let's give a chance, let's be good. So thank y'all.
There's no others signed up to speak in favor for. We do have some members who would like to speak in opposition, but before we call those up, I did receive 2 letters of opposition that were opposed of the rezoning request and future land use map amendment. One was from Robbie and Penny Shirley, one was from Angel Jackson Spikes and family. They are residents of Laurel Street and of South Cherokee. And I won't read these into the minutes, but I will provide them to Barbara, who can incorporate those into the minutes and also provide them to the mayor and council at their public hearing. So the first speaker in opposition I have is Carla Mock. Is that correct? Did I say that correct?
Yes.
Okay, would you like to come up, please?
My name is Carla Monk. I live directly across from this project. I live at 905 South Cherokee Road. I've only been there for 3 years. I've been in Social Circle longer than that, but at that particular residence, when I purchased the land, I was told it was, of course, strictly residential. I liked it down there. It was quiet. But South Cherokee was residential, North was more residential and commercial. I really am against having this across the street from me. I think it would bring in a lot of people. I just like peace and quiet, you know what I'm saying? And I just think that would be too much for me. I would appreciate it if it didn't happen, but that's all.
Thank you. Next, Susan Farrell.
Good evening. I'll try to make this as brief as possible. I live at 836 South Cherokee Road. My lot is 2 lots down from this. If I stand on my front porch, look to the left, I can see this. Over the past several years, if you've been in Social Circle for any amount of time, you have probably noticed there's been a lot of improvements on South Cherokee. Residents in this area have made substantial improvements to their properties with the understanding that the future land use for this area, as determined by the city, would continue to be residential. That lot had a house on it. It is residential. In addition, the addition of this gas station conglomerate in the middle of an established residential area would add unwanted automobile, foot traffic, as well as noise and light pollution. As a real estate broker, I can tell you our property values would plummet. Just ask anyone if they would like to live next door to a gas station. As many years as I've been selling real estate, over 20 in Social Circle, I've never had a buyer ask me, make sure I get next to a gas station. As far as the applicant's statement that this property is not as desirable as a residential lot, I'm aware of at least 6 to 7 properties that have sold in the past several years along that area of the Parkway and South Cherokee. You've seen new construction, we've seen a lot of rehabs. I mean, there's been a substantial amount of money put into these properties with astonishingly increasing values. Having been a volunteer serving on a couple of boards and commissions for the City of Social Circle, I know how important the gateways are. We have conversations about these all the time. And I'm quoting from the City of Social Circle Comprehensive Plan regarding the I-20 gateway. This quote is speaking specifically to the signage, but I would I would encourage your commission to consider these words when making a decision on this proposal for recommendation or not. The entrance provides a strong sense of arrival, reflects the character of Social Circle, and invites and entices the visitor to continue to enter the city. In my opinion, a gas station with possibly what retail goes next to that, vape shops, check cashing, maybe a nail salon, a Burger King, a Subway, that does not invite me to go further on into the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Penny Morse.
Hi, my name's Penny Morris. My husband Matthew Morris. We have been citizens, residents for 22 years now. I live in between Angel and Penny and Robbie Stanley at 543 Laurel Street. When we first moved here, we lived on a precious dirt road, walked it every day. My kids love to go feed the horses. I love Social Circle. I love my house. I've done lots to my land. I do live in a neighborhood. May not be like a neighborhood with houses right next to each other, but our neighbors are very close. We love each other. We do for each other. I don't even know how I would feel if I had a gas station outside when I walked outside, when I walked to my mailbox. When they put the bypass in, that was hard enough, especially because we didn't have a say of what we got to do. It took away that. I can say that in the number of years the bypass has been there, we have put up 2 brand new mailboxes, and just last week my mailbox was hit again. I don't know if it's tractor trailers just still getting confused of how to turn down Laurel Street. But I just hope you guys would consider the families, and that is a family area. It's not, it should nowhere ever be commercial. Also, the area that he wants to build this, I feel like there was this house on that property for so long that was an eyesore that we got to go by every single day. And, you know, yeah, that looks nice, but how long will it stay like that? Until, you know, you ride around Social Circle or you ride around Covington or, you know, Athens. So many of these areas, they end up closing everything that's in it except the gas station. And then they're just empty. And eventually they go completely empty. And then you're stuck with that at the very gateway of our city. So I just hope you guys will take that in consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Carol Royer.
That's right. Hi, Carol Royer. I own the property that is, you know, he owns this little 3-acre that was separated. Then he owns 20 acres on the other side of that, and I'm right beside him. 1246 Social Circle Parkway now. I'm sorry that they put the parkway in. I'm sorry he has 3 acres he doesn't feel like he can do anything about, but we've all been inconvenienced by the parkway, as you've heard. I'm not going to go into how much traffic there is, although out in my pasture in the morning when I'm feeding my horses, my partner and I, John, we have to scream at each other because there's so many vehicles that are going by, including, I think it's supposed to be up to 5,000 18-wheelers a day. So, one more insult to living on what was, I agree with you, Social Circle Road, a 1-lane dirt road when I bought my property and built my house 31 years ago, has turned into a place that I don't really want to live at anymore. And if something like this comes, this is talk about a gateway. Making this piece of property commercial is going to just open that 20 acres right next to me that Mr. Holmes has, and then he'll be asking to have that turned into a commercial. And who knows what will be built on 20 acres. Could be anything. Could be, I don't even want to think how loud it would be or the lights that could come. So I ask you, please deny this. Stop it now before it escalates and the domino effect continues. Thank you.
Thank you. There are no other registered speakers to speak against, so we'll close the public hearing. Something to consider when looking at a change of zoning is not just the use that's being proposed in front of us, but all the uses allowed in that zoning district, all the uses that would be allowed in general commercial. Would they be appropriate for this location? Because it's not guaranteed that if the zoning were to change, that the items that are in our packet would be built as it is. That's why the staff proposes conditions if the planning commission so consider and mayor and council change the zoning. But all the uses in the zoning district, you have to ask yourself, would they be appropriate at this location? And so just keep in mind of that, not just the gas station with tenant spaces and potential restaurants. Is all those uses, would they be appropriate? Because once the zoning is changed, then the applicant or the property owner has a right to be able to develop that property with any one of those uses that are allowed. That was just all I have to say. Or any other discussion, items you want to discuss, talk about, concerns, questions?
Excuse me, sir. Was the time already taken up for, because the floor was never opened up for any public in pro of the?
Yes, sir. The public hearing had been closed. All the time had expired.
Okay.
So at this point, are there any items of discussion the planning commission would like to talk about, explore, ask staff or the applicant?
Well, so I know that we just had a very large conversation about parking spaces and what is allowed on the corridor overlay area. So I guess some internal discussion. Would that make this part of the corridor overlay area?
Yes, it would. And that's why it's important to look at, this is a pretty picture that we have, but it doesn't necessarily meet the design and development criteria the city has adopted. So if the zoning change were to occur and the applicant, developer wanted to develop it, they would have to comply with all the requirements. Just looking at it, I don't think it would meet that for the parking, for the amount of, not necessarily parking, but pavement between the building facade and the adjacent street. So that's some things that developer, that engineer would have to work out. Again, whether it's this project or any commercial project that's permitted in GC.
Okay, so I'm just kind of getting rolling, I have more.
Go ahead.
So it is on the bypass, and there is tenant space, and there is a convenience store, and there's a gas station island area here. So I'm gonna assume that that's also gonna offer diesel fuel. Is that
I would presume
part of
so.
it? So how is this going to be just a friendly neighborhood gas station, not a truck plaza? Right, and all the headache that brings, because there are going to be a lot of large trucks coming and going. Do we have any recourse to address that when we talk about this zoning?
You're more than welcome to, you can ask the applicant if you'd like.
Okay, then I'm asking the applicant, how is this not going to turn into a truck plaza?
It's basically, it's not gonna be designed, my name is Ed Merchant, by the way, and it's not gonna be designed as a truck stop. This is completely a gas station business, which is gonna be just like a regular trucks, like not the big trucks, I'm talking about, pickup
And
trucks.
how are we gonna make sure that the 18-wheelers don't just pull through here? Because it also looks like it could be a very convenient turnaround spot for wayward 18-wheelers.
The only trucks usually in a gas station like this comes in, a lot of 18-wheelers never, I've been running this business for a long time, I develop properties. The only time you see a truck coming in would be a truck coming in and dropping gas. Usually this thing is not attractive to truck stops, this is not convenient for them to come in. This is just one diesel pump out of only one side, out of all those 5 pumps, only one side is diesel. So that is just for the convenience of people who are driving pickup trucks which are diesel. And the other question I was hearing about was the restaurants. We made sure that we did not put any drive-throughs in this, just to make sure that we're gonna have this thing as a regular local restaurants. So to answer, there's not gonna be no franchise business would like to come in without a drive-through. And we made sure, when we spoke to the staff, to have some seating area in the back and in the front, and we made sure that we should not have any parking in the back of the building. So that way, on South Cherokee Road, if somebody's across the street, as the respected lady says, she lives across, we want to make sure that she should not be feeling that people are parking in there. So we moved that, and we made sure that we had our discussion with the engineer, that we should not have any parking in the back. In the back, there'll be a patio with the restaurant where people are gonna be sitting and eating. It's gonna be a family environment. And in the front of the entrance, if you see the entrance of the building where the C-store is, you would never see a C-store where there'll be a seating area and the entrance is not being seen. So people have to literally right there, the entrance, and we took our C-store in the corner, which is usually not the case with the C-store. C-store would like to have the most visible area of the building, but we put our store in the corner, and which is not gonna be in glass because of the reason that we gave 2 corners to the restaurants, which is gonna be family-oriented restaurants, whoever comes in with the local, and we might be using, Walton County, or if Social Circle has, business relation, and we can talk to them if they have some people who are interested to come in and lease it from
More
us.
entrepreneurship.
Yes. So that's the whole point, that we made sure that we should not be having any drive-throughs, and no franchise is gonna even consider without a drive-through. So we knocked that out, especially for making sure it's gonna be looking like that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And at the BP from 30 years, we have big signs, board driveway. Still, if you drive by, you can take pictures. We have those signs from 30 years. No 18-wheelers allowed. And the signs are still there from 30 years, big signs.
Thank you.
Valerie, do you have any other questions?
That addressed a lot of them. Thank you.
Barbara, I'm gonna ask you a question if you've got a minute. Looking at, it just kind of gets into nuts and bolts and not necessarily the overview of the discussion of what we're here. Gas pump canopies, Social Circle treat those as structures? And if so, wouldn't structures need to be constructed within the wholly of the buildable area, being within the setbacks?
Yeah, in the corridor overlay, it's got a section in there about setbacks and the paving. So the paving can only be so much. Now, I had spoke with Nick, and I've got a picture on that board, and he was telling me that the GDOT right-of-way is like 185 feet. So you got 185 feet, and then starts the driveway, but then the pavement starts, which is like 24 feet wide on that one rendering that they gave us.
Yeah, 28 feet.
28 feet, and then the other side was like 30 feet.
And what I was getting at is just looking at, again, I don't want to dive too deep into the conceptual site plan, because a lot can change, but I'm looking at, they have the 75-foot building setback line going right through the gas pump canopy. If indeed that the zoning is approved and any structure is built there, then they would need to be built within that setback. And I don't know if these setbacks are accurate compared to the zoning district or not, that's just food for thought. But looking at the text amendment, or a change to the future land use map and a change to the zoning, is this location appropriate for that change? That's what we're here to consider. And set aside the applicant's proposed use, think about all the uses allowed in GC. This is our gateway. We only get one chance to get it right. We do have neighbors who live right against it that we should take in consideration their thoughts and their concerns. But we get one chance to get it right. Ms. Farrow quoted our comprehensive plan that the gateways should be there to draw people in. So with that, I have a hard time thinking that this is a logical location for a change of zoning and a change of future levels. That's where I sit right now. I'm not so sure this property is appropriate for a change at this time.
I'm sitting in the same position because I'm looking at 21 specific recommendations that the staff made in order to approve this. They would recommend the conditions, and I don't know that the owner or representative has been made aware of these, but I feel like that it.
So,
You know what I'm saying?
I feel like it is correct. We have one chance to get this right. I can think of another very close city that has a gas station kind of right as you enter their downtown area, or their entrance to the city. It's not really downtown. And it does nothing to attract. And so while I can certainly appreciate the sense of community that the applicant wants to bring, I'm not sure that this particular location lends itself to the appropriateness. And so may be premature, but I am going to go ahead and make a motion to deny the zoning change at this time due to it being in the residential area. And it is not currently in the commercial corridor.
So I have a motion by Valerie to deny the request to rezone from AG to GC. It also includes a future land use map amendment. Do I hear a second? We have a second. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Unanimous.
Who made the second, please?
Mr. Gates.
Okay.
So the next item is an amendment to the general section of zoning ordinance, delivery of violations and citations. Barbara, if I'm not mistaken, I believe you and Chief Zadell worked on this together. These next three, is that correct?
Chief Zadell did most of this. I did the staff report.
Well, would you,
I'm gonna introduce him.
okay, would you like to take a
Yes.
quick break?
Thank you. You want to?
Thank you.
Ready?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'm going to introduce these a little one by one on the amendment, but now our city attorney has made all of this into one ordinance because it is all in the zoning ordinance that we're asking for these amendments. And the first one is just a general section of the zoning ordinance to how we deliver violations and citations. The proposed amendment, if approved, would apply to the general section of the zoning ordinance to add methods of service for notice of violations and citations. This would allow the city staff to send citations via certified mail with a return receipt requested. It can be difficult for staff to locate violators that may not be home or at their place of business when the city representative attempts to serve a notice. In our section 7-308 of the city code, a public officer can already send a complaint and public summons via certified mail to parties of interest of owners of unfit buildings 14 days prior to a hearing. Staff would recommend that the Planning Corridor Commission consider approval of this zoning amendment to strengthen the process for serving notices, violations, citations, and this will be for our code enforcement that is under our Chief Zagal. So we have a code enforcement inspector that would like to have a little bit more leeway on how he serves things. And it would be a little bit more convenient. We can't catch people at home all the time. And I'm gonna quickly just read through 3 of these, and then I'm gonna ask Chief Zagal if he'll come up and kind of address any questions you don't have. Especially on the next one, is an amendment to add definition, new language, diagrams, and I did not load all the diagrams, I just kind of loaded one.
Barbara, can I stop you and ask you
Sure.
one question? These are listed on our agenda as 3 separate items.
It is,
Were they advertised as 3 separate items?
they were
Okay.
advertised as 3 separate
So
items,
here's what I'd like to do.
okay?
Let's continue on your staff report on all 3 items.
Mhm.
Then we'll open up the public hearing individually and have a vote on the items individually.
And I did advertise all 3, because at the beginning of the month, when I had to advertise, there was 3 different things, but our attorney has made all these changes into one. But we did advertise it as 3, and I did 3 staff reports. So, but we just wanted to let you know what we'd like to change. And the second one is a zoning ordinance for adding definition to our commercial vehicles parking in front yards, and allow with adding the zoning classes, residential medium density and residential high density, and removing, this is just correcting some errors that we have left in our zoning ordinance. We don't have a R12 anymore. AG and AG2 should not be considered because they are more than 5 acres or more than 2 acres on AG2, and you could have some farm equipment that would probably be parked on the side or something. This ordinance currently defines commercial properties as a vehicle designed to carry more than 1.5 tons, and this would be on your, excuse me, I need to go back. Currently, section 1106 of the zoning ordinance reads, no commercial vehicle shall be allowed to park in any AG, AG2, R25, R15, R12, or PUD district, either on property zoned or on the streets abutting such property, on Monday through Friday between 7 p.m. and 7 a.m. or on Saturdays and Sundays. The ordinance currently defines commercial vehicles as any vehicle designed to carry more than 1.5 tons, having more than 2 axles other than a motorhome, and any motorized construction equipment except on private property for construction in progress, any bus designed to carry more than 20 passengers. And staff recommends for the commission to consider approval for this zoning amendment. The third one we are doing a zoning ordinance amendment to section 1107, adding a definition, new zoning classes, language diagrams to better clarify the ordinance. The proposed amendments to section 1107 of the zoning ordinance would help clarify the ordinance by adding definitions regarding boat, front yard, trailer, and recreational vehicle. Other additions would include recreational medium density and residential high density zoning classes, as well as adding new diagrams, language, and removing the AG and AG2 zoning. Currently under 1107, the zoning ordinance reads that no recreational boat, vehicle, or other recreational equipment should be parked, such as travel trailers, campers, or travel buses of any kind shall be parked more than 24 hours in a residential district unless for one of the following. The boat, vehicle, or other recreational equipment is in the side yard or rear yard of the zoning lot behind a complainant building or structure. The boat, vehicle, or other recreational equipment is under a carport. If there is no principal zoning complainant structure on the zoning lot, the boat, vehicle, or other recreational equipment parking is only allowed if the boat, vehicle, or equipment is completely out of the public view. Boat, travel trailers, recreational vehicles should not be parked in the front or of a residential lot in any residential district. No residential boat, vehicle, or equipment may be used for living, sleeping, or housekeeping purposes in residential district. Currently, our homeowner had a variance request to park their boat in the side yard due to a steep slope backyard. The commission denied the request after viewing the photographs that showed the homeowner had parked their boat in the front yard, not side yard. Planning Commission, or staff recommends that the Planning Commission, Corridor Commission consider approval of this amendment to better clarify our zoning ordinance. Now, our chief has put together quite the diagrams, and I only kind of loaded one. I was kind of running late behind today, but I want the chief to explain, and we have lots more diagrams that we're gonna add to our ordinance, so you can definitely know what the front yard is, what the side yard is, what the backyard is, and definitely clarify what's a boat, what's a travel trailer, what's a motorhome, what's a RV, what's a travel trailer. So we've got lots of them. I only loaded this one, and this is our reasoning for doing this, is clarifying our ordinances so that no one has a question about what is in the front, side, and what the equipment is. So, Chief, he's done a great job on adding all these, and I apologize for not loading the entire diagrams that he gave us, which was really awesome. So we will definitely have everything cleared up if this gets through.
So does the planning commission have any questions of Barbara or Chief about how we got here, what we're trying to do?
I think it's pretty clear how we got here.
Well, thanks for pointing out the obvious there, Mike. Well, at this time, we'll open up the public hearing, Chief, unless you just want to say something.
Would y'all let me clarify these just a little bit as to what the intent is or where we're heading with it?
Sure.
Okay.
I have one question, and it's about the last one. I don't know how we want to go about this. And the reason why is because I have a boat, and I bring it home, and it drives past it on the weekend. You know, it's attached to my truck. You know, and I keep it off-site, I keep it at a facility where it's gated and locked and all that stuff because of the issue that we had previously. So I bring it just on the weekend, I leave it there, and I take it back, and I'm done.
Yeah.
Is that gonna, is that really?
No, actually, when we get to that part, if you want, I'll clarify. Actually, the intent of this ordinance is to relax that ordinance some because it's just utterly too
Well, because I want to be
restrictive to our residents.
Oh, it's a good example. You know, I mean, I don't want to sit there and go against something that we're saying, you know, me sitting here making these recommendations about stuff, right? So that's what I want to know is, you know, what, if that's something I need to stop doing, I need to stop doing it. If not, then that's fine.
Let me clarify when we get to that point, if you don't. Maybe. Would you like to start with the first one with our service? All right, so as y'all know, for the last around about 18 to 20 months now, I've been responsible for code enforcement again. Since July, I've had a full-time code enforcement officer, which has been absolutely wonderful. I think you can noticeably see a difference as you ride around town and having a full-time code enforcement officer working Monday through Friday, handling issues and getting on top of stuff. The issue we've had is as we start through service, and in the service particular, is that not everybody lives in social circle. And some of these properties have been bought on tax sale. One of the properties in particular that got the attention to this and made us want to go back is the fellow bought tax sale online and he lives in Maine. So we have no ability right now, any zoning ordinance requirement is required to be served personally. I can't go to Maine and serve him personally, so basically they can do whatever they want with the property. I have no enforcement capability. So what this does, this changes how we can service. We can send to the certified mail to the last known address, and that considers it personal service. Also, it allows us to go to the residents and post it in a conspicuous place, post a letter in a conspicuous space, and that allows us to be considered service through the IPMC. So what we're trying to do is just get to where we can get a hold of these people and get them in front of a judge if we need to, if they're not being compliant. Currently, our hands are pretty tied, so that's what we're trying to fix with the changing of the service.
And this follows the International Park Maintenance Code, which the city has adopted.
Correct, and updates to Georgia law, which our zoning ordinance doesn't reference, is where we're heading with this. What was the second one, Barbara?
The second one is, excuse me, is the 1106.
So, commercial vehicle parking. Currently, we are dealing with a complaint in Dove Landing, which is what got our attention to this, where a fellow's driving a semi-truck home every night, and he's parking it on the side of the street, which takes up better than 50% of the street based on the size of the vehicle. As we got ready to enforce the commercial vehicle ordinance, which clearly says you can't park in a residential district, there was some oversight. Dove Landing is RMD. And as we got to looking, it covered Ag 2, Ag 2, R12, which is no longer a zoning ordinance, R15, R25. It did not include, in a PUD, it did not include RMD and RHD. So we have no enforcement capability because that zoning class is left out of that particular subdivision. So as we got to looking, the zoning map was changed in, I believe it was September of 2017. The commercial vehicle ordinance was enacted in June of 2017. So 3 months apart, 2 months apart, you said the ordinances, but one was not reflective of the zoning change classifications. So what we want to do is go back and clarify and make the current zoning, make the ordinances match the zoning, current zoning. Anyway, honestly, I think it was just an oversight somewhere, so adding the RMD, RHD, the PUD, dropping the R12. And then we talked about where else would you likely find a commercial vehicle. If I ran a farm, I'm likely to have a vehicle in excess of 1.5 tons, so to say I can't have a commercial vehicle on farm property didn't make much sense. So as I talked with Scott and Ms. Barber, it was that we drop the Ag and the Ag 2 as their farm properties that likely to have the vehicles that were restricted. So we wanted to clarify that. The second part, we dealt with a case here that caused us to realize, the man asked a simple question of what was a commercial vehicle? And our ordinance poorly defines it. So we clarified what is and what is not a commercial vehicle. And then we also had the question of what's considered not in the front yard. So as we went back, and sometimes it's nice to go back and be able to find other people's ordinances that have already addressed this. So we went back and we found pictures that clearly laid out what was the main building line, what was the side yard, what was a rear yard, what was the yard if it was on a triangle, what was it if it had two sides of road frontage. And we went back and clarified all these, so if it's confusing to the code enforcement officer that's trying to enforce it, the general public that's being asked to follow is likely not to be able to follow it either. So that was our intent, and we laid out what was and what was not a commercial vehicle, what was a front and side yard, and we carried that over. And as we got into 1107, with the truck, with the recreational vehicles, trailers, they needed to meter, because the other part of that is when the officers out there, code officers out there, the public's out there trying to figure it out. This time it's included, this time this zoning class is excluded, this one is included, this one pertains to certain hours of the day. If you can't park a semi-truck from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., or 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., what was the difference of 7 a to 7 p.m.? You can't park in a residential district, you can't park there anytime. Why certain hours of the day? It just didn't make sense. So we wanted to clarify this, but we also wanted to get all the ordinances lined up where everything was above board and it was easy to follow, made it simpler for the public to follow as well as the officer to enforce. Following into 1107, which was recreational vehicles, one of some of the things we've dealt with was people parking utility trailers, lawn care trailers, enclosed trailers that they use for different things. They're not included in any ordinance for trailers. However, automotive trailers are, horse trailers are, RV trailers are for campers, four-wheeler trailers are included, but they left out certain things. So we went back again, got some pictures, laid out, these are the trailers we're looking at. They're not all inclusive, but it does define what a trailer is and what it's considered. And try to straighten this up and combine where we're taking. Currently, landscape is in one ordinance, horse trailers are in a separate ordinance, recreational vehicles and boats are in one ordinance, and this would bring all the trailers into one ordinance, following the same set of definitions as defined with the other, excluding AG and AG2, dropping the R12 classification and putting RMD, RHD and lining them up basically all together. To answer your question, the ordinance currently says you can't park a recreational vehicle, be it a boat or camper, for more than 24 hours. As I talked with Mr. Gaither and Barbara, that just don't seem, it seems a little too restrictive. Say I wanted to go out of town camping with my family this weekend, and I have to store it off-site because of the way our ordinance is set. That means I had to go pick it up on a Wednesday or Thursday, but that might have been the only day I could go get it, right? And then we're leaving and go out of town till Friday, and I come back on Sunday. Well, can't come back on Sunday and take it straight back to the storage area where I got it. It may be Monday or Tuesday do the work before I can get it back there. And for us to say you can only stay there 24 hours and be a citation seems to be a bit too restrictive. So as we looked at some of the other surrounding areas with us, it backed it off to 72 hours. That gives you 3 days to take it back where it goes. And we feel like that's a little less restrictive, and just a little less heavy-handed on our citizens if we don't need to be. And I think that answers your question, because yours comes on Friday and leaves on Sunday. The other thing it does too is it includes, we had the issue of parking in the street. We had several people in some of the subdivisions is parking like he brought up in the street, but they were being left there. That was the parking area, but it didn't fit in the driveway. What it didn't include was there's nowhere in the ordinance, any ordinances that covers parking the trailer in the street. So we added the terminology in this ordinance that says, or property abutting said property, which would be the city street. Any questions over the trailers, or what the intent here is to try to streamline this?
Has anybody else, besides city attorney, has anybody else weighed in? Okay.
No, man.
Well, we got a room full of public to hear about it, so hopefully it'll turn out for the council meeting. It won't get caught off guard. Thank you. Just for following Robert's Rules of Order, we'll open up the public hearing for item 4, amendment to general section of zoning ordinance, delivery of violations and citations. All those that like to speak in favor, please come forward. All those that like to speak in opposition, likewise. Seeing none, close the public hearing. Chair will entertain a motion.
Motion to approve zoning ordinance. Second.
Got a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by raise your hand. Thank you. Public hearing for ordinance amendment to section 1106, definition of commercial vehicles and parking in front yards. All those that like to speak in favor, please step forward. All those who like to speak in opposition, likewise. Seeing none, close the public hearing. Chair will entertain a motion.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by raising your hand. Thank you. And last but not least, ordinance amendment to section 1107, recreational vehicles in front yards. All those who'd like to speak in favor, come forward. Those who'd like to speak in opposition, likewise. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Chair will entertain a motion.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All those signify by raising your hand to approve. Great, thank you. Ms. Barber, any unfinished business?
No, sir.
Any new business?
No, sir.
Do we have business to consider in October? That's a loaded question.
I'm expecting one, but they have till Friday. But if I don't have it Friday, I can.
Well, nothing else, no other announcements. I hope everyone stays safe. I hope Friendship Festival is still a full go and not soggy. I'm sorry.
It is postponed until the 29th of October.
Well, thank you for the heads up. Okay. At this time, it's 8 o'clock. No other business items. This meeting stands adjourned. Amen.